Podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Your hosts, Joseph and Michelle Whalen, a husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics, are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Insights into Entertainment, episode 152. Gaming's best and bleakest of 2023. That's right. If I'm hosting, that means it's an episode about gaming. I am your host, Sam Whalen, and the guy that I just keep dragging into the river of gaming news, my co-host, Joseph Whalen. How's it going?
Hey, and if you're hosting as well, it means we're going to get into some negative stuff at the end of the show, too.
That's right.
That's our MO.
Yeah, we're going to start off positive, though. So today we're doing, like I said, another gaming episode. We're going to talk about the Game Awards. The nominations are out. The actual ceremonies are on December the 7th, so right around the corner. But yeah, we're going to cover some of the nominations, and then we're going to get into some bummer stuff. Because while it has been one of the best years for gaming, it has been one of the worst years for gaming industry layoffs. So we're going to get into some of the hardest hit companies from that, and who should be held accountable for these layoffs, and if there's a way to prevent them. But before we get into that, we have to plug all of our subscriptions, or we need you to subscribe. That's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcast. Is Stitcher still around? Last time I did this,
I think they are gone now.
Yeah, well, if you're still on Stitcher, find a way to subscribe to us. We'd appreciate it. iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Amazon, and Pandora. Everyone loves Pandora.
Yeah.
Shout out Pandora. I forgot about that. Of course, you can always contact us as well if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. We are on X at insights_things. I got it.
Yeah, it was limited in what my options were. Okay.
They were maybe already taken. Facebook, you can search Insights Into Things. Instagram, Insights Into Things. Anywhere, just search it. It'll come up. And of course, all these links can be found on our website, www.insightsintothings.com. Let's get right into it.
All right.
All right, so we're going to talk about the Game Award nominations. And I know what you're thinking. Do you want to start with some smaller stuff? No, we're going to start with the big one because that's what everybody's here for. All right, we're going to start with.
Are we planning on talking about anything other than the big one?
Yeah, we got a couple other things in there. There's one other smaller category that I want to talk about just because there's controversy. And who doesn't love controversy? But yeah, we're going to talk about the Game of the Year nominations. We've got 6 nominations for you. So let's take a look at them. And we've got them up on your screen for your viewing pleasure. We've got first one up is we're going to go from right to left, I guess.
Yeah, it's in a different order than the script. Sorry.
We've got Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. This is, of course, published by Nintendo and EPD. What's that?
I don't know.
Nintendo.
Yeah.
Oh, Nintendo EPD. I guess it's like a subdivision.
Entertainment something.
Sure. Yeah. So Tears of the Kingdom has been highly praised for its improvements over Breath of the Wild, offering an expanded world and features that encourage exploration.
Maybe it should be EGP.
For what?
Epic Games Publishing.
Well, Epic Games doesn't publish Breath of the Wild.
Oh, I'm looking at Alan Wake. I'm sorry.
We'll get to that in a second.
Jumping ahead.
I wonder, now I got to know what Nintendo EPD stands for. Someone send us an email. Chat, if you're listening, tell us what Nintendo EPD stands for. Anyway, it's a blend of traditional Zelda elements with innovative mechanics, makes it stand out in the series. Everybody loves Zelda, right? I mean, it's always going to get nominated. Breath of the Wild received similar praise, but we were talking off air before the show. You said you're not really in on Nintendo anymore like you used to be.
I'm not. I haven't been a Nintendo person for probably 15 years now. Nintendo to me was just always a little too kid-like, and that's exactly what they go for. So it's not a knock against them, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean there are games like Zelda and Mario that I think while they are they look kind of kiddie. I do think they can appeal to everybody. And I wasn't a big Breath of the Wild fan. I don't even think I finished it, and I haven't finished Tears of the Kingdom yet either. But I'm enjoying it much more than I enjoyed Breath of the Wild. I just think it's pretty incredible. I mean, it's one of those games where they just drop you into the world and they give you a set of tools and they just say go.
Yeah, I mean, they do a fantastic job in their games. It's just, it doesn't appeal to me. There's an audience that it appeals to, and for that, they love it.
Yeah, and again, Nintendo getting a lot of love. 2 nominations from Nintendo this year. But yeah, I mean, what is there to say? It's Zelda. If you like Breath of the Wild, you're gonna like Tears of the Kingdom. A lot of people, it is their front runner for winning this. A lot of people think it's gonna go to Tears of the Kingdom. I don't personally. There's one.
Neither do I.
Yeah, you'll see where our biases lie coming up shortly. But yeah, that's Tears of the Kingdom. Moving on to nomination number 2, we've got Marvel Spider-Man 2. This is published by Insomniac Games. Insomniac, probably my second favorite PlayStation acquired studio, behind Sony Santa Monica, who of course did God of War, the new God of War games. Insomniac,
Yes.
just incredible. Banger after banger games. Ratchet and Clank, Spider-Man 1, others that I'm not remembering. There was I think they did Sunset Overdrive, which was before they got bought by PlayStation. Sunset Overdrive, great game. You should all check it out. But yeah, Marvel Spider-Man 2 stands out for its dual character gameplay, innovative combat and traversal mechanics, and an expansive narrative that enriches the Spider-Man universe. I'm probably about 3/4 of the way through this. I've been trying to take my time with it because I do love these games, and I don't want to gorge myself on it. I like to take my time when it comes to these things. But I didn't finish it for the show, so what are you gonna do? But you haven't started at all, right? But you played the first one.
I haven't started it yet. What are your thoughts on it so far? How similar is it to the first? What's the storyline look like? Obviously, the graphics and everything are fantastic.
Oh yeah, it looks even better somehow because now we're fully with the power of the PS5. Oh, we didn't show it, but it was the power of the PS5. It looks incredible. It is more Spider-Man though. I mean, a lot like what we said with Tears of the Kingdom. It's more of the same. But for me, that's a good thing. I love Spider-Man, the initial one, the first one for PS4. I loved Miles Morales. Did you play that spin-off?
I did. Yes.
Okay. So yeah, it's more of that. But they find ways to innovate on it and make it more fun. There's new traversal mechanics. You've got the web wings. There's a lot more. You feel faster. There's like these big.
Having the PS5 helps with that.
Yeah, the one thing, and I don't know if I told you about this. As I was playing it, but the fast travel is like incredible. So the fast travel, you zoom out to the world map, you click a point, and it's instant. Like it just zooms into the map, and you're just there.
Yeah.
I don't know how they do it. Like it's remarkable to see in action. And yeah, they've added more because the map is larger as well. So they've added a couple more boroughs in New York, like Queens and stuff, and more suburban areas. I forget the name of it because I'm not from New York, but more suburban areas. But
so what can you tell us about the story without giving away any spoilers?
Yeah. I mean, if you've seen any of the trailers, you know we're dealing with the symbiote. We're dealing with Venom. And honestly, you can probably guess where the story's going to go because it's the same usually every time when Spider-Man deals with, if you've seen the Sam Raimi movies, it's a similar story. And honestly, so far, nothing has really surprised me with the story. I've pretty much been able to guess every beat. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because these, you still love these characters. You've got Peter Parker and Miles Morales now, which is really, really neat. Being able to switch between those two at will. And the really cool thing is like in story missions when you're switching between them on the fly. It's scripted in missions, but it's still really incredible to see it happen. It reminds me of Grand Theft Auto 5 doing the same thing, switching in game. But yeah, I mean, it's the story. There really isn't anything to spoil, honestly, not yet anyway. I mean, I'm sure some stuff will happen because I haven't finished it yet. But if you've seen a Spider-Man symbiote suit story, it's pretty similar.
So is this your pick?
No, my pick is your pick.
Okay.
Which we'll get to shortly. But that is Spider-Man 2. Now, this next one, I have probably the least amount of information on, personal experience as well. It's Alan Wake 2, published by Remedy Entertainment and Epic Games as well. Funny thing about this, there's no digital or physical versions. It's all digital. So, fun fact.
I think it's just a sign of the times.
Yeah, well, especially with it being published by Epic, they want everyone to go through their storefront. But yeah, Alan Wake 2 is noted for its shift towards a more intense survival horror, which you can see in the footage we're showing. It's very scary. Combined with its intriguing narrative and innovative gameplay mechanics. So yeah, again, off air, we were talking about this, and I mentioned how they work in real footage, and I'm curious if we'll see it in these trailers. But the use of the blending of real footage and gameplay is really, really neat. And I would play it, but I'm a coward and I don't want to get scared. So, but you don't have to play the first Alan Wake to know what's going on. It helps. And this game is also part of like the Remedy universe. Remedy also published a game called Control, which I think was up for Game of the Year 2-3 years ago, something like that.
Okay.
But it's like a connected universe now. So they're bringing the stuff from Control in, they're bringing the stuff from the first Alan Wake in, and they're bringing in some stuff from Max Payne, kind of.
Wow, really?
Well, yeah, because like they say that that's not part of the Remedy verse because they didn't like necessarily own it at the time. Like I think they published 1 and 2, but then 3 was through Rockstar, I think. But there's a character in Alan Wake 2 who is, for these you can follow this logic here, he's voiced by the voice actor for Max Payne. I forget the guy's name, but the mocap is Sam Lake, the head of Remedy. He's like the figurehead. Sam Lake did the mocap for Max Payne 1 and 2. So when you think of what Max Payne looks like, he looks like Sam Lake, but he's voiced by a different guy. In Alan Wake 2, it's Sam Lake, but it's not his voice. It's really weird. But that sums up Alan Wake 2. It's a weird game. It looks very artsy. I probably will play it one day. From what I've heard, it's incredible. It's really doing a lot for the genre, not the genre, the medium,
right,
pushing things forward and doing all kinds of stuff that hasn't really ever been seen before, and that's exactly what Remedy's best at. Do you have any interest in Alan Wake 2?
Not really. Haven't played anything in the series yet. I'm not into the scare type things. I don't like the dark type games. Yeah. I like the types of games that I can sit down, get immersed in, play through a story when I have the time. And I get obsessed with games like that.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'll play is, if I just have 15, 20 minutes and I just want some mindless distraction, it's, fire up the Xbox, play a shooter, play a sports game, something like that.
Yeah, that's the thing with Alan Wake 2 and with Control as well. You do get immersed. You kind of have to get immersed because there's so much going on. And that's another reason I haven't played it yet, because if it's going to be scary and I have to pay attention, it's like I just can't do it. Because scary, I'll be honest, folks, when I play a scary game, volume's all the way down, lights are on, I'm usually watching something else. Like I'm not listening, right? Because it's the audio that gets me. I can probably do with the visuals. But I'm going to have to pay attention to Alan Wake, and I'm going to be terrified the whole time. So we'll see what happens. I don't know if it's nominated for other stuff. It probably is. I don't think it's gonna win. I think it's probably towards the bottom tier for what people are guessing is gonna win.
Right.
But now we move on to our totally biased pick. Next up is Baldur's Gate 3, published by Larian Studios. The game has received critical acclaim for its gameplay narrative and production quality. It's already won multiple awards, recently cleaned up at the Golden Joystick Awards. Its deep integration of D&D mechanics, it's Dungeons and Dragons for you normies out there, combined with a rich narrative and flexible gameplay, which is probably my favorite part about it, makes it a standout in the role-playing game genre. It's revolutionary, right? I mean,
absolutely.
I've never played, well, that's not true. I have played something like it, and it was the last game published by Larian Studios, Divinity 2 Original Sin, which I was trying to get everybody to play, but, it was a little, it wasn't as accessible as Baldur's Gate 3. And, this game has taken everybody by storm. Everybody's talking about it. You have 500 hours in it.
Yeah, I have an unhealthy amount of time into this game for some reason. It really is a remarkable game. It to me, it's a genre defining game.
Yep.
And you look at the images of it, and the playthrough's great. The graphics are wonderful. If you're okay with turn-based combat, it's a great thing. But it captures the mechanics of a tabletop D&D game, which is very difficult to do. And the variance of the game. I've done 2 full playthroughs now and I have 5 short starts through Act 3, and I've yet to have the same thing happen twice in any story section.
Wow.
It's amazing that the game itself is that adaptive, and your choices matter. A lot of game systems tell you your choices matter, right? Well, normally it matters as to what your next cutscene is.
Mhm.
This is something, and Larian's known for this, where your choices don't matter, but your choices have consequences.
Yep.
And you may make a choice in Act 1 that 30 hours later in Act 3 comes back and has a completely different effect on how the game goes, how people treat you, how the story goes. To sit down and to even come up with a mind map of how these different storylines go blows my mind.
I don't know how they did it.
Like, people are afraid of AI taking over the world. Whatever this game engine uses to come up with its story is more dangerous, I think, and more intelligent than any AI out there.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. There's really not much else to say. It's incredible. And in that description we read off, I think the flexible gameplay is really my favorite aspect of it. It feels like D&D. You know, I love Dungeons and Dragons, and this is as close as you can get. And in some ways, I think it's better than actually playing D&D because I think it onboards everything so much simpler, right? At least on console, you know, your actions and everything you can do. When I'm playing D&D in real life, and I've got, even using the app or pen and paper, you kind of forget a lot of stuff you can do because there's so much information. But I think what Baldur's Gate 3 does so well is streamline that and make it so you really are considering everything you can do, even if it's just like shoving somebody off a cliff, which is like, you know, you can end a boss fight by doing that if you pass the check. And it's like D&D in that regard, where a DM could spend 3 hours planning a boss encounter, and you walk up and you pass the first persuasion check and the fight's over. You don't even have to fight the guy.
I know that feeling.
But like, I don't know how to describe it. I think it's a game that everyone can play. Like, it is a little bit complicated, and it's definitely, you can tell it was meant for PC first.
Sure.
But I think they did a great job making it for console too. Like, I think it still works.
Well, and that's the one thing that's worth mentioning on PC is it was built for PC. And in fact, you have a completely different interface on PC. But if you fire up a game controller on the PC, it changes that game interface so it looks just like the console. So it's completely, that's another thing, that the fact that they went through and made 2 completely separate interfaces for how you were going to interact with the game, just that level of forethought was extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I have to say, you know, you and I both play D&D. We both DM from time to time. This has changed the way that I play D&D.
Yep.
It's educated me on different character class information, all that stuff. But the fact that it shows you, you know, you could sit down at a tabletop and roll dice and throw a fireball at somebody, and it kind of just rolls off your tongue and you move on to the next thing. You don't know what it looks like. And in here, not only do they visualize what spellcasting and combat looks like, they show it in different ways for different classes, you know. And even, you know, if you go with a bard, the bard can cast, you know, any number of spells, but depending on the instrument that the bard is using, the visualization looks different and is custom to the instrument, which is just incredible.
Yeah.
It adds so much ambiance and so much life to the game. That's why I think this one should win.
Oh yeah.
Even if it doesn't.
Yeah, spoilers, folks. I don't think it's gonna. It's nominated for 8 things. First of all, I do not think it's gonna sweep. I think it will get most of them. But like, it's up for like multiplayer game. I don't think it's gonna win that.
And the multiplayer aspect is terrible.
It's not great. I like that it's in there, and I want to do a playthrough with my friends whenever they get it.
Well, the multiplayer. All right, so multiplayer, in as much as
multiple players,
4 people can be in the game.
Yeah, there are multiple players,
but they're all playing their own story essentially, and you can interact with their story to a certain amount. There's no instancing that happens here, right? So you don't have a shared experience. You go off and you have dialogue on your own that's relevant to your character, and you can share that with other people, but they can't participate in it.
Right.
It's not an MMO. It's a kind of a cooperative play through that you do, most of the time,
Mhm.
right? It's not even all the time. So it's not really a good multiplayer game. It's a great single player game that has some multiplayer capability.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that does shine in the multiplayer is the combat. I think because we played it very briefly, and that's the only experience I've had with the multiplayer was the hour that we probably played.
Right.
So I can't speak to it fully, but the combat in multiplayer is great because the combat is normally turn based, and it still is in multiplayer, but it syncs up whoever the real players are. So if you and I were playing, our turns would happen simultaneously, but everything else is still turn based.
Yeah.
So you can sync up abilities. There is a lot of potential there. We just didn't play enough of it to find out.
Well, and the one thing I will say that was great in multiplayer is as you play through your character's turn, you end your turn. In single player, if you end your turn prematurely, it's over.
Yep.
In multiplayer, if you end your turn, you have to confirm that you're ending it. That safety feature needs to be worked into the single player.
It is.
It is now?
You can, yeah, I
Okay.
turned it on because I kept accidentally ending my turn. You can toggle it so you have to hold triangle to end your
Okay.
turn.
At launch, that wasn't
Oh,
there.
really?
Yeah.
Because I would end my turn accidentally all the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's got to be a setting for
All right.
this.
I have to go turn that all in the
it's
game now.
much better because there's been so many times where I've done it accidentally and like haven't even done an action. And then, I get beat up because I didn't do anything.
Right. The one thing I didn't like about the multiplayer, though, is as you go play through the game, you pick up companions.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the rule is whoever talks to the companion gets them. And I can't hand that companion off to you so you can go do something else while I go do something else.
Especially when cutscenes can be triggered just by walking.
Proximity.
Yeah. So that's a little weird. But everything else is great.
Yeah.
I think I just get unlucky when it comes to these things, and I usually have technical bugs when other people don't. I have had some bugs with it, but considering everything that's going on, it's like a miracle. It's like it's from like on high. It was sent down, and it runs and it works. And if you think you can do something, you probably can. You feel so free, and I've never really played another game like that where there really are no. I mean, there are constraints, right? In terms of like you can't like clip through a wall or something,
Right.
But like. I've never played another game where I go into a situation and I feel like I could handle it in almost infinite ways.
It's a game that is sophisticated well beyond its years.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't expect something with this level of intelligence to come out for 5 to 6 years.
Yep. We could probably do a whole episode on it, but we do have some other nominations to talk about.
We got 2 more to go through. Let's get rid of the rest of these.
So next up is Resident Evil 4, published by Capcom. This game is awesome. I played this game. I never played the original Resident Evil, so I was able to play this. This game rocks. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. It's like if you played through an action movie, like an 80s action movie. And it is scary. There were some parts where the volume had to go down and the lights had to come on. But overall, you have like a million guns. So you feel like you're in control. It's less of you're running from the monster, more like you're running to the monster to shoot it. Some highlights. This remake of the classic game has been praised for its impressive graphics, audio, and revamped gameplay mechanics, while retaining the core mechanics of the original and introducing new features and expanded content. Like I said, I never played the original, so I can't really speak to that. But I've played this game and finished it, and I absolutely loved it. I'm glad it got a nomination. I know some people are maybe a little bit perturbed by that because it's a remake, but if you play the game, it really is a remake. It is different from the original, and from what I've seen, it is its own game, and it stands on its own. I really think it does, and I highly recommend it if you like action games, because it is more of an action game than it is a survival horror game. And if you like 80s movies, because it feels like that.
There you go.
Have you played any Resident Evil?
I played Resident Evil a long time ago on like a PS2 when it first came out, or if it goes back that far. Again, I don't like dark games.
Yeah.
So
that's Resident Evil.
Right. It's not one that I've ever really jumped on.
Yeah. In terms of where I think it ranks in terms of potential to win, I think it's probably towards the top. But I just, after talking about Baldur's Gate, I don't see how anything could beat that. we've got a little guest in the studio. A little lanternfly just flew in. So yeah, Resident Evil 4. And our final one here is Super Mario Wonder, published as well by Nintendo. I own this game, but I have yet to play it because I'm lending it to my girlfriend. But it looks cool. It looks cool.
The sacrifices we must make.
I know. Highlights. This game is celebrated for its control mechanics, animation, expressive characters, innovative level design, and dynamic audio. Is it? All right. Dynamic audio. I guess. It features new power-ups and a fresh visual design that breaks from the traditional Mario aesthetic. And that's really, so many people for years were asking for these 2D Mario games to get a visual not upgrade, but a visual change. And that's what we got in this game. I mean, this doesn't look like other Mario games, which is, I think, a big reason why it's such a standout. I'm looking forward to it. I just, Game of the Year, I don't know. This was a surprise for me, but I think it's because it's Mario and it's Nintendo. And I think there's just a level of industry praise that comes with that.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong with this looks suspiciously like a standard Mario platformer.
Well, yeah.
With really nice graphics.
It does look very pretty. They added a bunch of new power-ups and stuff. From what I've heard that from people that have played it, it's not as... it didn't break the mold as much as people wanted it to. I think a lot of people were just hungry for a, just full send it, just do something different. Oh, he's on me now. I flicked him.
Now he's knocked out somewhere.
Sorry about that. But yeah, I think it wasn't quite the property shakeup people were looking for.
Well, I think it's funny that there was criticism leveled at Resident Evil for being a remake. How is this not a remake?
Well, it's not I mean, all the levels are unique. You'll probably still get the Mario 1-1 world that has every Mario game, but all the levels are new. All the content is new. That trailer did not really do it justice, I don't think.
It didn't impress me, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. If there was one that I could be okay cutting from these nominations, it would probably be this. But again, I haven't played it. Maybe when I play it, I'll change my mind. But
fair enough.
Yeah. So those are your Game of the Year nominations. Tell us what you think should win in the comments down below. I think our vote is soundly Baldur's Gate.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we have some other quick things I want to round up here in this section because we've gone kind of long. It has been a banner year for gaming. A couple nominations games I would like to highlight that didn't make Game of the Year nominations. Sea of Stars, highly recommend that if you like RPGs, that pixel style. That game is incredible. It's fantastic. Final Fantasy 16, Armored Core 6. These are all nominated in other categories, not Game of the Year. Starfield. Remember Starfield, everybody?
I have heard rumors of Starfield.
It's bad. I don't like it. I'll say it.
I heard it's got a really good engine for building Starship.
Yeah, I haven't done any of that.
That's what everyone seems to love about the game.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I think since it's come out, it was praised pretty highly on release, but I think as people have been able to sit with it, I think it's somewhere in the middle of the pack, which is a disappointment, especially if you're an Xbox fan, because that was
supposed to be their game winner.
That was supposed to be their game winner, and it's nominated for one category, and it's probably not going to win.
What's that, for biggest game of the year?
RPG, I think, is what it's up for. But Baldur's Gate's in that category, so it's not going to win. Yeah, so Jeff Keighley, the guy that runs it, he's like the brains behind the operation. He said that even though, it's a great year for gaming, we did have to limit it to 6. Let's see. Do we want to cover these other categories, or are we short on time?
You can run through them real quick.
So we got these are some that I just wanted to highlight. Best performance, we have Ben Starr for Final Fantasy 16, Cameron Monaghan for Jedi Survivor. Have you played that yet?
No.
Yeah, he does a good job. It's fine.
I didn't really like the first ones.
Oh, that's right. You didn't. We've talked about that before. Idris Elba for Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty, which...
What was that, an add-on for Cyberpunk?
Yes.
Really?
But it's also like a remake, kind of, because with Phantom Liberty came the Cyberpunk 2.0 update, which like changed the whole game and made it what it should have been at launch, which is impressive and deserves acclaim, but...
Not that steaming pile of crap that we got at launch.
I love Cyberpunk since day one. I
love driving around a city and seeing random piles of trash just fall from the sky. It was such a just delightful thing.
I've been a Cyberpunk diehard supporter since day one. Not a CD Projekt Red supporter because they lied a lot, but I don't know. People are saying it's back. And it's kind of wild that Idris Elba is in the game.
That is kind of, well, that's the thing. If you have a terrible release for a game, sign a celebrity to the next version of the game.
I own this DLC, but I have yet to play it because when I was playing Cyberpunk, I'm playing through it to experience the 2.0 stuff, which is very impressive, and I highly recommend going back to it if you want. You can drive around the city.
Is it another 15 terabytes of a download?
Probably.
It took 3 days to download it.
I'm going to butcher this woman's name, but Melanie LeBird.
Sure, that looks good.
From Alan Wake 2. She plays, I think her name's Saga in it. She's the other main character that isn't Alan Wake. Neil Newbon, who is Asterion, right? In Baldur's Gate 3. People love that guy. He didn't survive in my playthrough very long.
Didn't survive in mine either.
So, but I know he's captured the internet's.
Turns out a stake through the heart really does kill a vampire.
Yeah, I pretty much instantly killed him. I think he's one of the front runners, and then my boy Yuri Lowenthal for Marvel Spider-Man 2. He is the best, and I hope he wins. But that's who I'm pulling for. I love Yuri. He kind of does the same voice all the time, but man, is it good.
He's like the Nicolas Cage of voiceover.
So we'll see who wins that. Really quickly, best independent game. I just wanted to cover this because this is where the controversy is. Defined as for outstanding creative and technical achievement in a game made outside the traditional publisher system. Remember that. It's going to be important. So we've got Cocoon. Haven't played it. Want to. Viewfinder is really, really interesting. The concept of that game is, are you able to pull footage really quick for it if you can? Maybe?
I can try.
Because you got to see it. You have a camera, and when you take photos, you can then go into the photo, and it changes the layout of the level. And it's tough to describe, but once you see it, it will like blow your mind. So yeah, we're pulling up a trailer real quick. I played the demo for this. I haven't played the full game, but it is it's really, really remarkable. And again, it's one of those games where you wonder how it even runs. So yeah, here, check this out. So he just takes the picture
for our viewing audience.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, audio listeners. Look up a trailer of Viewfinder. It's very cool. But yeah, I don't know. I think this is one of the reasons why the indie category is
this looks
so
like
important.
Something that should be in my Oculus Quest.
Yeah, like it's incredible how this like works. And like I said, it's hard to describe for audio listeners, but go check it out. And I think the demo is still available. And you'll pretty much get the gist of it. But yeah, it's one of those games where it's like, how is this even running? And how does this even work? So yeah, that's Viewfinder. Sea of Stars is also up for the indie category. I love that game. That probably is in my top 5 for game of the year, for my personal game of the year. It's incredible. Dredge, which I think is a spooky game. And then Dave the Diver, which I love. Dave the Diver, also a great game. Is it an indie game, though, is what people are wondering. Because Dave the Diver is developed by Mint Rocket, which is a small team. But Mint Rocket is owned by Nexon, which is a multi-billion-dollar gaming company. So people are wondering...
That sounds like the evil corporation from a Bond movie or something.
Yeah, it sounds like from RoboCop. So yeah, unfortunately, Dave the Diver is getting a lot of heat because of this. And the team at Mitt Romney, that's what I think I'm going to say. It is a small team, but they're getting all this heat because is it really an indie game? I don't know. What do you think? Because they had effectively a blank check to make this.
Well, and that's the thing, is that you can have a small team, but when you're getting backed by a large corporation like that, and you've got the budget for it,
right,
and you don't have the pressures of being that struggling indie developer trying to find an outlet for it and someone to push it and market it, I think you very quickly get outside of that indie game realm.
Yeah. And you know, I still highly recommend you go play Dave the Diver. It's you run a sushi bar, you're exploring, you're a diver. I don't know, it's hard to describe.
That sounds exciting.
It's very exciting. I would make you pull up the trailer, but that was really hard to do for the other game. So, but yeah, Dave the Diver is great, but I don't think it should be in the indie category. That being said, you should still go play it.
Okay. Well, I think that's probably it for this segment.
Yeah, I think we got everything we could out of that. Go play Baldur's Gate 3. When we come back, we're going to get into the bummer part of the show where we talk about industry layoffs. We'll be right back.
For over 7 years, The Second Sith Empire has been the premier community guild in the online game Star Wars: The Old Republic. With hundreds of friendly and helpful active members, a weekly schedule of nightly events, annual guild meet and greets, and an active community both on the web and on Discord. The Second Sith Empire is more than your typical gaming group. We're family. Join us on the Starforge server for nightly events such as operations, flashpoints, world boss hunts, Star Wars trivia, guild lottery, and much more. Visit us on the web today at www.thesecondsithempire.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to Insights into Entertainment. Today we're talking gaming. We just got done covering the Game Award nominations, and now we're going to talk about industry layoffs.
Of course we're talking gaming because you're on the show.
That's right. I should wear like a gamer sweater or
Should
something.
be Insights into Gaming when you're on.
Yeah, it would have like Mountain Dew in the intro. All right. So anyway, like I said at the top of the show, despite being lauded as one of the best years in gaming, the industry has been hit by massive layoffs at every level. At the time of writing, it's probably higher now. Around 6,000 people have been laid off in the gaming industry. There's a very helpful but depressing website called videogamelayoffs.com, and it's been tracking the numbers since the beginning of the year. It's just one of those stories you hear about every week if you're not covering, I'm not covering anything, I'm not a journalist, but if you're following gaming news, it's one of those things that you can't really ignore, especially this year. And you know, I don't know anything about economics, but I feel like it's one of those things where when one company does it, there's a real chance of it starting a tidal wave of this, where it's like it doesn't make it okay, but from the company's point of view, it might have like, well, if everyone's doing it, we might as well just do it now to cut costs. What do you think?
Well, and I think what you run into really is when one company does it, there's a viable reason for doing it, and usually it's an economic reason,
Yeah.
or you know, it could be depending on what the industry, but we've seen layoffs across the board, regardless of industry, not just video games, and companies that are doing perfectly fine, companies that are doing record numbers, record profits are laying people off. The unfortunate reality is that record profits, in order to get record profits, you either have to bring in more income, bring in more revenue, increase your margin on what it's costing you to do things, and to do that you cut costs, you cut labor.
Yeah.
And that's usually the first thing people cut. And when you've got games that are releasing and you don't have another game in the pipeline that requires that level of labor commitment, that's the first thing that gets cut when it comes to the software industry.
Yeah, and we're going to have a segment coming up where we get into more the nitty gritty on why these layoffs happen. But I just wanted to highlight some of the big examples of these layoffs. One of which is at Unity, the software developers. They let go around 900 people this year alone. Unity has been in some very, very hot water lately. I don't know if you've been following any of this. They changed its pricing structure this year and basically nuked their whole brand for no reason. Not for no reason. They wanted to make more money. But like, it was crazy.
So explain what Unity is and what their product is.
So Unity is an engine, right?
Yeah, it's a game engine.
Yeah, that you can develop your game using Unity.
So a lot of the popular games that are out today are built on this game engine.
Right.
And when a game developer uses this engine, they pay a licensing fee to Unity to use it. So for every copy of the game that's sold, a percentage of that revenue goes to Unity for their royalties for that. And that's what they overhauled.
Right. So this is from The Verge. Unity they said that beginning next year, they would implement a pay per download pricing scheme that would charge developers a flat fee anytime a game using Unity software is installed. I think the keyword there is installed.
Yes.
Right? Because
you can't do demos at that point in time without paying Unity.
Right. And that is including installs that may not be legal
Right.
through pirating and things like that. Also multiple installations of a game, like if you uninstall it and reinstall it.
Well, because what happens is every time you install a game, the Unity engine reaches out to the licensing server. So if you do demos of the game, if you have pirated downloads of the game, if you uninstall it and reinstall it, every time it goes out and hits that licensing server to confirm that it's a valid license, as opposed to what it was before was on sales. So every time you would sell the game, that would then go towards the licensing.
This is more from The Verge. The fees are further broken down depending on where a game is purchased, meaning that a game bought in the US, UK, and other standard markets is assessed a higher fee than when it's bought in emerging markets like India or China. So, like, I don't know what they were thinking when they did this. This made a ton of people angry. Many developers, publishers, and consumers completely disavowed Unity. People wanted to boycott the game or the engine itself. And you got to understand, Unity is like the number one. It's like Unity and Unreal are like the two engines that pretty much everyone uses for any kind of game development. I mean, Unity has tried to walk some of this stuff back, but I think a lot of the damage might already have been done. What do you think?
Well, and the thing is, the regional pricing that they're talking about is not unusual in any other industry. So in any other industry, talking manufacturing, for instance, you have tariffs on purchased goods. So, for instance, I have a friend of mine who lives down in Peru. For him to buy a graphics card that costs $2,000 up here, he's got to pay $3,000 for it because of the tariffs. So Unity's logic is, well, if there's regional pricing based on tariffs because of purchased goods, then we can do the same thing for licensing. Well, the problem you run into is they're the first ones that are doing this.
Yeah.
Nobody else does this because there's no tariff on licensing. There's a tariff on imports when you're talking about actual manufactured goods. Yeah. So there's no impetus whatsoever for their reasoning behind what they're doing. That's why they're taking the heat for it. And as a result, they're losing a boatload of business in the process.
And that results in 900 people losing their jobs.
Exactly.
And, you know, should the CEO maybe have taken a pay cut instead of having to fire all these people? Maybe.
That's a very controversial philosophy. A lot of rank and file workers have.
Yeah. Another company that I want to highlight is Embracer Group. They've been making all kinds of news in the last couple of years. They've been snatching up a lot of studios like Gearbox, who made Borderlands, and Crystal Dynamics, who you guys will probably know if you've played the new Lara Croft games. Embracer Group is sort of this conglomerate that's just been eating up studios.
Kind of like EA and all the other conglomerates out there.
Yeah. Except they're not doing it very well. They're now cleaning house. This is from IGN's Wesley Yin-Poole. Embracer Group has said it has laid off 904 people. That's about 5% of its workforce. Since its financial struggles beginning following the collapse of the $2 billion deal, reportedly with the Saudi government, funded company Savvy Games Groups. When this deal didn't go through, this was like insane because it like fell apart like the day before it was going to happen, and like the industry was like, what's going to happen now?
Right.
Turns out a bunch of people are going to get laid off. In a recent statement, Embracer said they wanted to become a quote stronger company, I guess. Another they're closing whole studios too that they own now. So Volition, who developed the Saints Row games, they got another stab at Saints Row and it failed critically and commercially. They shut the studio down. So yeah, Embracer is kind of just cutting swaths from their company now. And a lot of it has to do with that $2 billion deal that fell through.
And this is typical, corporate mentality is that they're interested in the bottom line.
Right.
And anytime you have a publicly traded company that has a board of directors and it has, stock owners, your fiduciary duty is to the stockholders. And you trust the people that are making these decisions, who aren't always they're business people, but they're not necessarily software or game industry people. And that's sort of where you get that dirty corporate feeling that people tend to get here, is that they're just looking at the bottom line and they're going to cut their losses. They're going to cut what they think are losses in order to make money. And it's not just software. Bob Iger's doing the same thing at Disney and killing Disney. You've got industries across the board that are doing this type of stuff. They see something that's not raking in money. They have a certain margin that they want to meet. And if you're not meeting that margin, then you're a casualty. ignoring the fact that a lot of times the game industry doesn't work the same way these other manufacturing or entertainment industries work. The return on investment tends to be a much longer timeline that the corporate world and the stock world does not want to wait for.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of giant corporate companies, Amazon Games also had some layoffs. They recently cut 180 jobs from their games department. This comes during the largest sweep of layoffs at Amazon as a whole. We were talking about, industry-wide stuff, with nearly 27,000 jobs being cut in the last year. Now, we're talking about 6,000 layoffs in the gaming industry alone, 27,000 just from Amazon, just to put things in perspective.
But that's across the board in Amazon. That's
Right.
sales, manufacturing, warehousing, everything. And a lot of that for Amazon is not because they're losing money, because they're not.
No, we actually have record profits.
Right. A lot of that has to do with improvements in how their processes work. A lot of automation going in place. They've roboticized a number of their plants. So they've negated the need to have physical labor here. And you'll notice only 180 of those 27,000 jobs were in the game industry.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people they had in their game studios to begin with, though.
Right. Yeah. So Amazon's revenue is up 13%. Probably helped cutting 27,000 people that you don't have to pay anymore.
Looks good at the bottom line.
Yeah. Net income tripled to 9.9 billion. That's from CNBC's Ashley Kaput. That's a funny name. Sorry, Ashley. But yeah, so profits are up. And like you said, when the bottom line comes up, it's capitalism, baby. That's the way the news goes.
So despite the game industry experiencing one of its best years, over 6,000 people face layoffs. How do you think these job losses at various levels are impacting the industry's morale and future prospects, especially in light of such a successful game release year?
I follow a lot of people that are in game development on Twitter and stuff, and I listen to a lot of gaming podcasts of people that are very close with people in the industry. It sucks. Turns out layoffs suck. I think it's really, really bad for morale. Because I think a lot of people they grind and grind and grind and try to get into the industry, only for them to have a very high rate of getting laid off anyway. Especially when, like we talked about before, when a game ships, what happens now? And yeah, it's a great year for gaming, but it's tough to ignore all these layoffs. And if you were going into this industry, you're going to have to wonder, am I going to be the next one to get laid off if I even can get a job in the first place?
Yeah, it's when you see this type of thing happen across the board, it's tough when it's your own company and they're doing layoffs. My company did layoffs this year too, and
so did mine.
And it has an effect on morale, and it has an effect on the output. And I think a lot of time the corporate entities that make these decisions never really go out and do a proper impact analysis to see what level of productivity is going to be affected by people with decreased morale, because the idea is, oh, well, if they don't perform, we'll just lay them off. Well, when people walk out the door, it's not a salary and benefits that's walking out the door that you can save money on. There's brain drain. There's tribal knowledge that walks out that door, that as a result, the people that are remaining, because the job still has to get done, and the people that are left to do that job are struggling now to do that job. So either it takes longer, the quality drops off, the volume drops off. And I think when corporate entities make these decisions, they don't always take that impact analysis into account.
Yeah, and speaking of quality, you just triggered something in my mind. This is a very small facet of this whole thing, but one of the sections that gets laid off a lot is quality testers. So that reflects in your game when your game doesn't work because you fired everybody that was going to test it. So I know EA fired a bunch of them lately. I think but again, it's one of those things where when your game's no longer in development, you have no need for these quality testers. But with games like Apex Legends, games that are live as a service that are continuously going in development, where do quality testers fall in that?
Well, and that's the thing. Having worked in the software industry for years, your ratio of testers to developers is usually 2 to 1.
Mm.
And testing is always seen as the first area that gets cut.
Yep.
But what they don't realize is that you can't trust a developer to test their own code. They're too close to it.
Mm.
So you take a look at Larian Studios, right? So Larian Studios did their official release in October of Baldur's Gate 3. They've had 10 patches and 10 bug fix patches they put out, emergency bug fixes, and 3 or 4 major patch releases in that time. So the development doesn't stop when it goes out the door because it's never a finished product. You've got a lifetime of probably 4 or 5 years that you still have to support the product. So getting rid of the people once the game's out the door is probably short-sighted.
And within those 4 or 5 years, you're probably going to start development on your next game, especially with something like Baldur's Gate 3 that was insanely successful.
And by the time Baldur's Gate 3 comes out, by the time your premier game comes out, you've already got a pipeline that's full of schedules for what's next in line. And if you don't, then you might as well just shut your doors because given the time frame it takes, where you're looking at 4 or 5 years of development to put a decent game out. So if you don't already have something in the pipeline and something in the works when your current game comes out, you're going to go out of business.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough, right? I mean, you get this a lot with movies too. You know, these things take so long to make and then it's out and then people immediately want more.
Right.
And I mean, that's just how it goes. But hopefully that keeps some people employed too. So yeah, that's those are our layoff discussion. In our next segment, we're going to talk more about the causes of it. I know you did a lot of research for this, so I'll probably let you take over for it. But yeah, layoffs are bad. Layoffs are bad, and it sucks.
Layoffs are bad. Don't do layoffs.
Layoffs suck if it happens to you. But we'll be right back.
Insights into Teens, a podcast series exploring the issues and challenges of today's youth. Talking to real teens about real teen problems. Explore issues from braces to puberty, social anxiety to financial responsibility. Each week, we talk about the topics concerning today's youth. We look at how the issues affect teens, how to cope with these issues, and how parents, friends, and loved ones can help teens handle these challenges. Check out our video episodes on youtube.com/insightsintothings. Catch our audio versions on podcast.insightsintoteens.com or on the web at insightsintothings.com.
Welcome back to Insights into Entertainment, everybody. We're wrapping up the show today talking about the cause and the purpose of all these layoffs. So the trend of layoffs in the video game industry can be attributed to several factors, and understanding this is key to forecasting the trends during and its impact on the industry's future. And we go to our corporate shill, Joseph Whalen, for the layoff report.
Wow.
Why layoffs are a good thing. Go.
No, not why they're a good thing. What causes layoffs? So we already kind of touched on economic fluctuations. So the video game industry is not immune to the broader economic trends in the world. And economic downturns or market uncertainty can lead to budget cuts and staff reductions. And everyone knows where we are with inflation and how tight money is and everything's costing more money. So that's pretty obvious right there. We're also looking right now, and it's first time in the industry's history that we're in a post-pandemic period. So we're still looking at adjustments from that. COVID-19 pandemic led to a surge in gaming as people sought entertainment during the lockdowns. This surge may have led to overhiring or overexpansion in some companies. As the world returns to normalcy, demand may stabilize or decrease, leading to restructuring.
There's also, people now are like, there's the discussion of work from home. Well, why wouldn't I just always work from home if I can? Especially when it comes to game development. A lot of these folks packed up their work computers and brought them home to keep working on games during the pandemic as best they could. So now, there's a discussion of, do we even need to be going back into, in the work? And that's across all industries. If we can, can we just keep the work at home thing going? And then, that's more cost cutting because then you don't have to rent office space.
Absolutely. And a lot of companies are looking at that as a possibility. In fact, behind you is a permanent workstation that's been set up for my wife, Michelle, now, who works from home 2 days a week as a result of that.
Yep.
And they saw what they can get out of it. So the other thing you look at is shifts in consumer behavior. Changes in gaming trends and consumer preferences can impact revenue streams. Companies may need to restructure to align with these shifts, leading to layoffs in departments that no longer align with new strategies. We also have technological changes. Advancement in technology can render certain skills or positions obsolete. As companies invest in automation and new tech, there may be a reduced need for certain roles. And then we get to the corporate shill side of things with financial management and strategic shifts.
Ugh.
So poor financial management or strategic pivots can necessitate cost-cutting measures, including layoffs, which is exactly what Unity ran into.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're trying to make a buck, so they made a change in their strategic, product line there, and it came back to bite them.
It's a very nice way of saying we want to make as much money as possible all the time.
Absolutely. So tell us about what the actual impact of all this is on the video game industry.
Yeah, so I mean, there's innovation and competition. Layoffs can lead to a consolidation of talent, with larger companies absorbing experienced personnel. You got a little bit of that with Embracer. Now that they're all part of this conglomerate, maybe they're having some cross-studio development. This could foster innovation, but might also reduce competition if smaller companies struggle to compete, which is definitely true, especially when it comes to indie development, which is what we have next. As talented individuals leave larger companies, there might be a surge in indie game development, which I think we talked about this before when we were talking about the Microsoft Blizzard thing, where
Yes.
it's like as more studios are bought up and part of large corporate structures,
Something has to fill that vacuum, and the indie companies step in to do that.
Exactly. There's, this can lead to more diverse and innovative gaming landscape, which I'm all for. Assuming, it's, I'm all for the creative side of things, as you can probably tell by this. It's tough to see, but maybe that is a silver lining.
Well, and the one advantage you get from the indie side of things is you don't get the corporate shield. You get idealism. You get companies that come in here with this idealistic view of, I'm going to make this for the fans. I'm going to listen to the fans, and I'm going to produce something for the fans. If it doesn't sell, then the corporate guys come in, they suck up the company, and then they move on. A lot of times, for the longest time, BioWare was of that philosophy of, you had a couple of regular guys there that wanted to make good games for people, and they did, until they sold their souls to EA and moved on.
We would all do it, let's be honest.
I would too. Hell, if I could get, a couple $1 million for this podcast, I'd sell it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, next episode we're gonna have McDonald's branding all around the place. Yeah, I highly recommend you play Sea of Stars because it is a very similar situation. I'm blanking on the name of the developers, but it's like that, where they made another game called The Messenger, but they all seem like very down-to-earth people. We have shifts in job roles. The industry may witness a shift in the types of roles that are in demand, with more emphasis on technologies like AI, VR, and cloud gaming. I don't know about VR. Are we done with VR?
I think VR is pretty much, although Apple wants to bring VR back, I think they're missing the boat.
They're going to make people spend like $10,000 for a headset.
So you can get freaky eyes on the outside of your headset.
Yeah. We talked about this already a little bit, but the impact on gaming quality and diversity. Layoffs can lead to reduced manpower, impacting quality. However, they can also force companies to focus on core competencies and produce higher quality titles, which is kind of what Sony's doing. They're spending and taking the time to have all these first party games that are, industry wide successes, commercially and critically, that sort of hold up the brand just by virtue of existing. And finally, employee well-being and industry reputation, which the gaming industry already has a pretty bad reputation in terms of like crunch culture, which is probably still happening. But I think it has been reduced because it was exposed a lot with how often a lot of these devs are crunching. And you hear stories from like 2005 of people pulling like 30-hour days. And it's like, oh my God, how do we let that happen? But hopefully that's a little bit better now.
And I've been on build teams, not for the gaming industry, but in the software industry, where we've put in 36, 48 hours straight to get a build out the door for, an artificial deadline that was set by a product manager because he made a promise to a customer. So it happens across the board.
Yeah. This might affect the ability to attract top talent in the future, which is true. If your industry has a terrible reputation and fires people all the time, people probably don't want to work for you.
Amen to that.
So yeah, I mean, that pretty much sums everything up. That covers the layoffs. Of course, we started off pretty positively. with the Game Awards. So,
So, considering the influence of economic fluctuations on the video game industry, how do you think companies can better prepare for market uncertainties to avoid drastic measures like layoffs, especially given the industry's recent success?
I don't know. Maybe pay higher ups less, which is never going to happen, but it's a suggestion. I know everybody turns to what was his name? He was a Nintendo CEO, Iwata maybe. Iwata, I forget his name, but Nintendo, when the Wii U came out and like completely failed, he ended up taking a pay cut so they didn't have to lay people off. Now everybody looks to that like it was a miracle because it kind of was,
Right.
and people don't. CEOs are never going to do that, but that would be nice if that was the alternative to laying people off. But it's just not. It's not the way that capitalism goes, unfortunately.
See, and I think it has to be research and development. I think if you got enough irons in the fire, if you throw enough stuff against the wall, something's going to stick. And if you've got a couple of games that are in there, you can tell after 2 or 3 years of development if your game's going to be a success, because at that point in time, you've trotted out previews at a couple of game shows, you've had some industry experts take a look at it, you've got some play time with it, and people need to be more antiseptic, I'll say, in their judgment of their products. If you get to that point and the product isn't very good, you need to cut your ties to it and move on.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that because you should look into the development cycle of Redfall. We covered that last time I hosted for a gaming show, but since that game's come out and like is awful, devs have come out and said that like they knew this game was going to fail, but they had to release it anyway because you had to put something out, and it was like sunk cost fallacy where we spent all this time. We probably should cancel this game and rework it, but higher ups need us to release something, so here's what you get.
Well, and going back to one of my old favorites, Star Wars: The Old Republic, same thing. They spent almost 10 years of development on that, 6 of which was trying to build their own game engine before they realized they couldn't, and they wound up using a 10-year-old game engine to basically reskin the entire game for it. And then they released it, and within the first 6 months, they lost 50% of their subscribers because the game just wasn't up to what it was supposed to be. At some point in time, you need to have the sense to pull the plug on it.
Yeah.
And if you can do that and you have other projects that are in the works that are under development, you shift your resources to something that's more promising.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll, with all these layoffs, and maybe somebody will learn something from it, hopefully.
Yep.
But yeah, so any final thoughts? I feel like we've covered a lot of this. We've shared our opinions.
We've beaten the horse quite well here.
Well, I guess that's going to wrap things up for today. Thank you so much for listening. Before we head out, we've got some more show plugs for you. If you haven't
But the
already,
first set wasn't enough.
I know the plug's so nice we do them twice. If you haven't already subscribed, what are you doing? Pause this, go subscribe, come back, rewind it, play from the beginning. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, maybe Stitcher if it's still around, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Amazon, and of course, Pandora. If you have any comments or questions about today's show, email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. We're on Twitter. Some people call it X, insights_things. Twitch. If you have Amazon Prime, that means you've got Twitch Prime, and we'd love to have that Prime sub over at twitch.tv/insightsintothings, where some of you may be watching us live stream right now. Facebook at facebook.com/insightsintothingspodcast. Instagram at insightsintothings. And all of these links and so much more can be found on insightsintothings.com. That's going to wrap things up for today.
That's it. Another one in the books.
Stay safe, everybody.
Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Your hosts, Joseph and Michelle Whalen, a husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics, are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom.
Welcome to that sudden intro to Insights into Entertainment, episode 151, Indy Strikes Back, the Disney Fire Sale. I'm your host, Joseph Whalen, and my rested and relaxed co-host, Michelle Whalen. I don't think I changed that from the last one.
I don't think so. I think you kind of left it.
Because you were very busy today. I don't think you're rested and relaxed.
No, I am not.
How you doing today, dear?
I am doing well. How are you?
Doing okay. So we finally, we had some, I guess, entertainment news that was worthy of talking about.
True.
Anything else exciting happened since our last podcast?
I can't think of anything. I don't even remember.
It was only a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it
wasn't
that long ago. No, I don't think anything
I
really.
think things have been kind of tame.
Yeah,
So
they normally are for us. So
usually, thankfully.
Mm-hmm. We're not at Comic-Con this week.
That's
San
true.
Diego.
That,
so.
Yeah, we didn't go out to San Diego for that. We don't have any conventions coming up anytime soon, do we?
No, because the last one, Fan Expo, we actually decided not to go to.
Yeah.
So I think the next one coming up is, I think there was a ZoloCon fall thing, and then RetroCon is the one that comes in September. So I don't think there's anything in the summer lineup for us.
Interesting. That's usually our season too to do 'em.
Yeah.
But yeah, when a good one comes around, we'll cover it for everyone.
Absolutely.
So with the writers and actors on strike, box office numbers struggling to rebound after the pandemic, and missteps from streaming costing studios billions, what could Hollywood possibly do to save the day? Maybe have a fire sale. Make some money, or at least that's what Bob Iger's looking to do. But before we see our heroes on the picket lines or unemployment lines, we first saw them on the silver screen in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And we've got our thoughts on that and more coming up on this episode of Insights into Entertainment. But first, I'd like to take a moment to invite our listening and viewing audience to subscribe to the podcast. You can find audio versions of this podcast listed as Insights into Entertainment. You can find audio and video versions of all of our podcasts listed as Insights into Things, and we're available anywhere you get a podcast: Google, Stitcher, Podbean, Pandora, wherever. I'd also invite you to write in, give us your feedback, tell us how we're doing, give us suggestions on what you'd like us to cover. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. You can catch us on Twitter at insights_things, or you can find links to all that and more on our official website at www.insightsintothings.com. Are we ready?
Sure.
Let's do it. So, how not to handle a strike? So, everyone knows that the actors and the writers are on strike right now. It's kind of hard to miss the talent strikes happening across the entire entertainment industry at the moment. First, the Writers Guild of America went on strike in the name of fair wages and protections against AI encroachment, which I thought was kind of interesting. We didn't think AI was going to be destroying the world
soon.
through that method.
Right.
And then just recently, the Screen Actors Guild and the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, SAG-AFTRA. Boy, that just rolls right off the tongue, doesn't it?
Sure does.
They joined them shortly afterward
Yes,
on the
they
picket
did.
line. So who are they fighting? So they're fighting the Hollywood studios, represented by the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. The producers are the bad guys, depending on your point of view, I guess.
In most cases, yeah.
So what's particularly curious about all this is how the Hollywood studios seemed to invite a strike, and then once they got one, they did everything in their power to inflame it even it it seemed like some Hollywood studios were actively itching for a writer's strike. Speculation about why exactly ran the gamut. Maybe it was to save a little money in the short run on shows the writers of Writers Guild were part of. But more obviously, it might be to secure the least costly compromise on issues like residuals and transparency about viewership.
So, as discussions broke down between the two parties and the SAG-AFTRA representatives, we're seeing a majority of their demands rejected despite a nearly unanimous strike vote. A Deadline story quoted unnamed executives detailing a strategy to bleed striking writers until they came crawling back. Further inflaming the issue were comments from well-known Hollywood executive Bob Iger of Disney saying, "There's a level of expectation that they have that is just not realistic, and they are adding to the set of the challenges that this business is already facing that is, quite frankly, very disruptive." Iger may have succeeded in looking like a cool, calm, and collected voice of the studio, but he actually opened a can of worms that simply egged on the SAG-AFTRA president, Fran Drescher. Her response was one that was up there with a battle cry, motivational speeches like that of which Hollywood has historically been known for. "We are the victims here," she said, marking the start of the actor strike. We are being victimized by the very greedy entity. I am shocked by the way the people that have been in this business are treating us. I cannot believe it, quite frankly, how far apart we are on so many things. How they plead poverty, that they're losing money left and right, then giving hundreds of millions of dollars to their CEOs. It's disgusting. Shame on them. They stand on the wrong side of history." And this was a very funny meme that kind of popped up where, the woman we all thought would lead the rebellion against the machines and, the woman who actually ended up leading the rebellion against, the machines.
That's very funny.
Yeah. So Barry Diller, who is the chairman and senior executive of IAC and Expedia Group, and a former Hollywood chief, suggested that the studio executives and top-earning actors take a 25% pay cut to bring a quick end to the strike and help prevent the collapse of the entire industry. It's worth noting that at this time, the motion picture industry is still struggling to recover its box office numbers, which are nearly half of what they were pre-pandemic. It's also worth noting that in their haste to capitalize on the streaming bandwagon, many companies are in the red. Disney, Peacock, Paramount Plus, HBO Max, Discovery Plus have reportedly lost a combined $18 billion since 2020, which begs the question, can either side in this strike really afford it?
Yeah, I think that the sad thing here is obviously the fans are the ones that are going to be losing out.
Right.
In general.
Right.
The last time we had this, was it back in the 20-aughts or whatever when the last strike was, we wound up getting a rash of reality TV.
Well, and the one, I guess, positive is there's been such an influx between all of the different streaming services that have so much original content that's already there. So if nothing were to come back for a little while, there's plenty out there. It's just that you're not going to get anything new. So anything that people are waiting for, like a new season of Stranger Things or new things, that are on regular broadcast television, that's what's going to hurt. Whereas, somebody like a Netflix or, all of these other streaming services, they're probably not really going to be hurting because there's so much content that probably the average person hasn't gone through everything in the catalog yet.
Well, and that's also a good point because even Disney's getting to the point where their exclusive streaming content they're going to be releasing on network television. They have already announced they're releasing the Ms. Marvel series.
Right.
that was never intended to come out on network television.
Right. And I think there was something else from HBO that was going to be released on, so that's how they're kind of balancing, okay, well, we have enough on our streaming, but what are we going to do on broadcast? Okay, well, now we'll start doing a little bit of this to make it happen.
So, of course, inflaming all this is the wage disparity between executives and the actors and writers who make up the union workforces on strike. So just to put this into perspective, the average pay for top Hollywood executives climbed an average of 53% from 2018 to 2021, up to $28 million annually. And to put that further into perspective, you've got Bob Iger of Disney, who makes $31 million. Of course, he just renegotiated, so he's going to be making $1 million, but his incentives put him back up into the 20s. You have David Zaslav of Warner Brothers, who is compensated $39.3 million. Ted Sarandos of Netflix gets $50.3 million a year. Brian Roberts of Comcast is $32.1. Bob Bakish of Paramount is $32. And you have Tim Cook from Apple at the top at $99.4 million. Now, granted, Tim Cook, Apple does more than just streaming.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So there's a lot more going on there. So you could probably take, 60% of that out, and he'd still be in that third of the $40 million just for the streaming side of things.
Right.
So to contrast that, we take a look at the Writers Guild of America, and what their average writers make per year is about $250,000.
And that's probably on the high end for...
That's average. That's what your average writer makes. And your average SAG-AFTRA actor makes about $40,000. That's what blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, that average is low because you have the top 1% talent.
Right, that make $10 million a movie or something. Yeah.
Well, more than that.
Well, yeah.
So... taking a look at the top talent, you've got Tom Cruise, who in 2023, which is about half over, has taken in over $100 million. You have Will Smith, who took in $35 million just for his Apple TV Plus show, Emancipation. Now, that's a real slap in the face.
That was funny.
You have Leonardo DiCaprio, who brings in $30 million or more per project, as does Brad Pitt. You have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who routinely brings in $20 million per project. Now, I'd certainly like to smell what The Rock is smelling compensation-wise. Even Will Ferrell, who I'm not a big fan of him, I know a lot of people like him and think he's funny, he demands about $20 million per project as well. So the 1% of the club, really, they're the bulk of the actors that are involved here. Your extras, your bit parts, your character actors, the people that aren't your big Hollywood stars, they make up the bulk of the union.
Right.
And they're making an average of $40,000 a year.
Well, and some of them aren't even making that because in order to get benefits through the union, you have to be making a minimum of $24,000 a year. And there are so many...
And I agree.
That
that's
aren't
why
even
these numbers are average numbers.
That. Right.
So obviously,
no, I get it.
You got people making more, you got people making less.
And there was actually, something that I saw that said where you had about, if they took 25% off the top, and there was something that I saw that even said 2% of the top executive salaries. So 2% would be like nothing. Nobody would notice, but basically everybody that's in the union would be able to get coverage because of just that 2% off the top for everybody. Right. Now, what is interesting was I just saw briefly an article I didn't read fully, but there's one of the movie studios, A24, that they actually met all the negotiations. So anybody that's actually working with A24, with their production team, they're not striking because they said, okay, you want more money? Here's more money. The actors, you need more money. So they went, all of the demands that were asked for between the actors and the writers, they met them. So those people are working.
Right.
So,
So the vast majority of Hollywood really is made up of starving actors who live paycheck to paycheck.
Yep.
Now, being the person that I am, I want to ask the question, why not just go get a real job if you're not making it in acting? I understand it's a lot of people's dream.
Right.
But if you're living paycheck to paycheck and you can't make ends meet, maybe it's time to go get another job somewhere.
And in a lot of cases, they do have other jobs. They are doing other things. So.
Have you ever considered a career in truck driving? And I don't mean to sound callous about it, but
right.
If you're not, like, if I wanted to be a doctor and I'm a failed doctor and I can't do it, I'm not going to keep trying to be a doctor. I'm going to go do something else.
Right.
And in this case, it's the industry. The industry's not treating it right. If I work for a company and that company mistreats me, doesn't compensate me fairly for my work, doesn't provide benefits, I'm going to leave and go somewhere else and do something else.
I know. And many people do. And you see that time and time again where, unfortunately, the paparazzi are now, in the age that we're in, that everybody has a camera on their phone. Someone will go to the grocery store and, hey, aren't you, so-and-so? You used to be on television. Now you're bagging groceries. And you get belittled for going and earning an honest living and doing that in some cases.
And you know what? That stems from caring what other people think.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where I think a lot of people, they try and, okay, well, if I can't be on the screen, let me see if I can do behind the scenes and do something. So you see that too, where people try and, get into production or set design or something to kind of...
Or you turn into Kevin Sorbo and you just troll people on Twitter when you're not a successful actor.
Yeah, that too. So
really what the strike boils down to is two things. One, it's salaries. Mm-hmm. Really, it's three things. It's salaries because of the disparity between, and I don't know why you would pick on CEOs. I think the problem you have is that when you compare yourself to a CEO and you're an actor, the value that you lend to the franchise at that point in time is on a completely different measuring scale than what the CEO or what the executives bring. It's like you're comparing apples and oranges. Mm. So I think that's a problem right there, that you're comparing yourself to that. The other one that they have is residuals from streaming.
Right.
So the problem that you run into here is traditionally the studios are usually 2 or 3 steps behind technology. Right. They missed the ball on VHS and got screwed on that. They missed the ball on DVDs because they tried to encrypt them and they got screwed on that. So they kind of got out. This is the first time in decades that they got out ahead of things. Mm-hmm. And they got into streaming, and it was supposedly successful, even though they're $18 billion in the hole because they invested so much money in it. And the problem that you have is the previous contracts didn't... Streaming exploded so quickly, right. You couldn't have it in a contract before.
Well, and really it was because of the pandemic, because everything really changed in some respects for
yes
that.
And no. I mean, Netflix was a streaming juggernaut well before the pandemic.
Right.
Everybody saw that.
Right.
And was shocked that Netflix, because everyone had their content on Netflix.
Mm-hmm. True.
Everybody was shocked at how well Netflix did. And Netflix did so well because they just poured money hand over fist into original content.
Right.
They were in the red for years producing content.
Right.
Just to get it out there and get subscribers in. Mm-hmm. So you had technology explode, and the industry's trying to catch up to it now. You're also dealing with the industry at a very fragile state now. Your ticket sales, your box office ticket sales are about 50% what they were pre-pandemic. You've got streaming services that are hemorrhaging money to the point that they're pulling back on projects now because they can't afford to keep making new content. So to strike now, when the industry is at its weakest, to a certain extent, I think Iger's right in that it's a really bad time to do this because you're really going to hurt the industry. What's going to happen here is they'll resolve this strike, obviously, at some point in time. But how many people are going to be out of a job because you're going to have studios that are cutting budgets back because of the losses they're already incurring, plus the losses that they're incurring because of the strike. So you may see as much, I've seen speculation up to a 30% cut in the workforce in the industry. Is that really the union benefiting its employees at that point in time? Where, okay, you can get your 20% raise, but you're out of a job now. Good luck finding a job at that rate.
Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, the third one they're complaining about is AI. Now, AI, there's a couple of different aspects of AI. One is the writing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can go out and have some AI system write a script for you. The AI that's out there today isn't good enough to write a Hollywood script.
Right.
Because all it does is it parrots what's out there already.
Right.
So you're not going to, it's good to help supplement or to start or whatever. It's not going to replace writers.
Right.
So that's an irrational fear right now. The other fear is deep fakes.
Right.
Where you've got industries where you can produce somebody else's likeness. Well, there's already laws for that. You don't need to have something in your contract. If somebody uses your likeness, like you can't make Indiana Jones without Harrison Ford.
Right.
You can digitally reproduce them, and they did. They de-aged him and they digitally reproduced them. But if they did that without Harrison Ford's permission and involvement, he would have sued them.
Well, and I think that's what a lot of these background actors are concerned about who are on that bottom level, is that they're going to go in and do something and there's going to be something in the contract saying, you know, oh, we now own your likeness, and it's going to be, you know, hidden somewhere.
And then they can still do that. There's nothing that says they can't do that. So you need to have an agent that's going to read your contract for you.
That's the thing, is that they're trying to protect, to make sure that's not something that's added on, because it's now so easy to do.
But that's not something you can expect to use as a bargaining chip in a negotiation for a strike. That's something that's a negotiating point when you negotiate your contract. So make sure that your agent and your lawyer know how to read a contract.
Right.
So I'm kind of hesitant on giving them credit for that one here, but salary-wise, I'll totally give you that. Streaming, you know, we covered the what was the one with her studio where Disney didn't want to pay her?
Oh, Scarlett Johansson.
Scarlett Johansson,
That
yes.
was the kind of the start of everything.
Right. So Disney basically engaged in a contract with her that said they'd pay her a certain % for ticket sales at the box office.
Right.
Then the pandemic hit, and they released it streaming.
Right.
And they said, oh, but we don't have an agreement on streaming. And they pretended as though they could just do whatever they wanted with it at that point in time.
Right.
When in reality, you didn't have an agreement for streaming. So you legally have no rights to stream it. It's not that you don't have to pay me for it.
Right.
So they wound up settling that out of court, though. But that's another, you know, instance of how streaming, it's so new that the industry it's falling over itself now to try to figure out what to do with it.
Right.
So anyway, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about Disney's fire sale. We'll be right back. For over 7 years, the Second Sith Empire has been the premier community guild in the online game Star Wars: The Old Republic. With hundreds of friendly and helpful active members, a weekly schedule of nightly events, annual guild meet and greets, and an active community both on the web and on Discord. The Second Sith Empire is more than your typical gaming group. We're family. Join us on the Starforge server for nightly events such as operations, flashpoints, world boss hunts, Star Wars trivia, guild lottery, and much more. Visit us on the web today at www.thesecondsithempire.com.
So welcome back, everyone. So, how much would Disney go for in a fire sale? Probably outside of our price range. But in a recent interview for Squawk Box, conducted by David Faber, held at a media conference in Sun Valley, Idaho, Iger's made some volatile comments he's since been trying to walk back from. The initial questions revolved around the impact of the writers and the actors' strike, but quickly moved to business matters that may have revealed more information than Iger was originally intended to go public at the time. During the interview, he indicated that ABC and its local stations may not be core to the Walt Disney Company. The interviewer speculated about a possible sale, and Iger said, "We have to be open-minded and objective about the future of those businesses." Bloomberg reports that with cable television on the decline, Iger wants to sell most of Disney's TV assets, mainly ABC, Freeform, and FX.
Well, Bob Iger had made it clear that he's looking to sell some of the company's TV and streaming assets. Rumors have been swirling for months in the industry that Disney may even be considering selling the entire company. Disney's streaming services have been losing money and subscribers. Disney lost 4 million subscribers last quarter. Streaming is expected to have hit a total loss of $800 million in the third quarter. According to Bloomberg, Iger wants to completely sell or restructure Disney's TV and streaming business in India, where Disney Plus has had its biggest losses. Disney Plus Hotstar, the region's version of Disney Plus, lost streaming rights to Indian Premier League cricket matches, leading to the service losing 3.8 million subscribers in quarter one and 4.6 million subscribers in quarter two. Despite the recent setbacks, Iger looks to double down on streaming with his plan to hold on to Hulu. Disney will launch a combined app for Hulu and Disney Plus later this year, though Disney will more than likely have to buy Comcast's 33% stake in Hulu in 2024.
So experts speculate that selling Disney's TV networks could get them about $8 billion, which could help offset the cost of that last third. Potential buyers would be financial entities like private equity firms. Iger also wants to hang on to ESPN, but is looking for a partner for a sports network. Potential partners include sports companies and Apple. Speaking of Apple, there have been rumors since Iger's return last November that he will sell all of Disney to the tech company. At the time, Iger called these rumors nothing more than speculation, but the sale still seems to be a possibility. Bob Iger isn't known for selling. During his first tenure as Disney CEO, he acquired Pixar, Marvel, and Lucasfilms, which have all proven successful purchases.
According to Bloomberg, TV generated 35% of Disney's revenue, about $24.8 billion, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, and over 50%, $7.5 billion, of its operating income. Contrast that against the massive losses from streaming, and it's a bit of a head-scratcher as to why he'd want to keep the loser and sell the winner. Disney Plus was Iger's baby before he retired the first time around. Launched under his part-time successor, Bob Chapek, it met with initial success despite its surprisingly discounted monthly rate, but quickly started hemorrhaging subscribers, failing to offset the high costs of their premiere productions. It's also worth noting that Iger got his start not just in TV, but in ABC. When the Walt Disney Company acquired ABC in 1995, they acquired Iger, and he worked his way up to the CEO of the entire company over the next decade, finally landing the top spot in 2005 after Michael Eisner was ousted. Iger was CEO until retiring in 2020, but returned to the position in November 2022 after they kicked Bob Chapek back out. So, what do you think? Do you think selling it off piecemeal is worthwhile? Or do you think they should sell the entire thing at one time?
I don't know. It's kind of interesting. So it kind of reminds me of the documentary that we watched on Marvel and the history of Marvel and how that went. And you kind of see how, okay, you had Marvel and they weren't doing well, so they sold this entity to this to this one, this to this one, and this to this one. And then while it worked for them, it kind of made a mess of things because you had this company that could do this and this company that could do this. But if you had this company that wanted to do something joint, they couldn't without trying to jump through hoops to pay all these other people. So if you were to do that, I could see that kind of happening with Disney, where certain things with Disney would succeed, and then I think certain things with Disney would kind of fall flat if you just kind of sold it off to the highest bidder, to do one or the other. ESPN, does that need to still be with Disney? I think ESPN could go anywhere. Like, there's not enough crossover with ESPN and anything else with Disney. Okay, so Disney, down in Orlando, they have the Wide World of Sports. That's really the only kind of tie-in between the two.
That was ABC, though.
Right. So, so I don't really see an issue if you said, okay, we're going to sell that part off to somebody else. The network TV stuff, I guess maybe you could kind of let that go to somebody else, because right now there's a partnership, because every now and then there'll be, a Disney movie or something. And then, of course, they tried with the whole Disney Plus thing with Dancing with the Stars. The last season of it, instead of putting it on network television, they only had it streaming on Disney Plus, and they saw their numbers go down. So what are they doing this season? It's going to be back, on regular television, and then they'll, put the episodes on Disney Plus after the fact. So, kind of going back to how they were. So I don't know. It's kind of a mixed bag. I obviously I don't want Apple to buy them just because I'm anti-Apple, but that's just me. But then again, maybe, Apple getting into it, maybe we'd see things get updated in the parks and things like that haven't, that have been neglected over the years. So I don't know. I'm kind of...
Well, and I think you raise a couple of very good points. One being, the things that he seems to want to hold on to are the ones that are the most logical to get rid of.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones he's saying he wants to get rid of are the money makers that are the most logical ones to hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, ESPN can be parceled off and sold off either on its own or to somebody else and have zero effect on Disney whatsoever. Nothing's tied to ESPN. Why Disney even has it still is amazing to me. But ABC, ABC has been their premier broadcast network for decades now.
Mm-hmm.
It's been there for special events. It's been there for special releases. It doesn't make sense, especially considering it's making money. And it's making a lot of money, apparently. So why would you get rid of that? So streaming and television right now.
Right.
So you've got production studios.